Hey everyone, this is Tori Cushing from Authority Labs, and today I'm just going to walk through a simple tutorial on how to check your robot.txt file and make sure that it's set up correctly using Screaming Frog and a few other tools that were addressed in Annie Cushing's site audit checklist. If you haven't checked that out, it's bit.ly/audit checklist. Audit-checklist. And this was brought up by Jeremy Rivera's post that was posted to Authority Labs blog earlier this week, and it was a simple DIY website audit, and it basically walked you through how to set up your website correctly. One of the things that he brought up was the robot.txt file, and I thought that it'd be great to do a tutorial on it and use Screaming Frog to set it up correctly. Anyway, let's dive in. Okay, so to start off, I'm going to go ahead and check out a few websites that I like to go to and see if they have robot.txt files. So to do that, you literally just type in the domain that you're looking for, and right after the domain you type in, so this is just a website that I usually go to for vintage clothing. It's Adored Vintage. I'm just going to put a backslash, and then I'm going to type in robots, multiple robots.txt. Then you can see that their file comes up. If it doesn't come up, that means they don't have one. Simple as that. So I did the same thing for ModCloth and screamingfrog.co.uk. So you can see that 3 of the websites that I'm looking at all have robot.txt files. They're all set up slightly differently. So we're going to go through this little checklist that I created in Excel, and I pulled these different checkpoints from Analytics site audit checklist. I highly encourage you to check that out. You can find it on her website. But yeah, so these are just kind of a few that I thought would be good to address in this tutorial today. So the first thing is to check if it has a robot.txt file, and you can see here that ModCloth, Adored Vintage, and Screaming Frog all do, and I put in links. The next thing is to check if they have a sitemap. Now this isn't necessarily required, but a lot of SEOs in the industry still think that it's valuable to have a sitemap that has been submitted to Google. Some disagree with it. That's totally fine. But, go ahead and do this at your own discretion. I'm just looking at it. I'm just more showing you how to check if there is one and if it's set up correctly. So, to check if there is one, you can go to Google and you can type in site : in your domain, and then in URL and sitemap.xml, because sometimes they're not under, when you go to look for the sitemaps, they're not Screaming Frog /sitemap.xml. Sometimes they're a little bit more hidden in the site. So this is the best way to check it out. Check out the entire site. So I'm going to type in modcloth.com, in URL sitemap, and here it is. I can see that ModCloth has their sitemap set up. Okay, and I already checked Adored Vintage and Screaming Frog, and they don't have sitemaps set up. So that's totally fine. Here's an example of a sitemap. There are a lot of sitemap generators that you can check out. It's basically just saying Google to Google, here's everything that I want you to look at. Also, if you go to modcloth.robot.txt, you can see that they link to each of their sitemaps. So they have one for their main sitemap, they have clothing, they have shoes, they have accessories, because this is a larger site, and they do that. So I'm going to go back to my checklist. So you can see that, yes, there's a sitemap for ModCloth, no for Adored Vintage or Screaming Frog. I put it in orange because it's not totally necessary. It's just something to look at. Next, we're going to check if there are any errors in the robot.txt file. So we're going back to the robot.txt file and checking to see if there are any errors in the file that they generated. So to do this, Annie Cushing set up or linked to a really cool tool. Then I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste into my domain. I already opened it up here. And don't let the not so fancy front fool you. This is a really awesome tool. What you're going to do is you're just going to type in your URL or copy and paste your URL in, and then say check robot.txt. Okay, so Screaming Frogs is set up perfectly. It says that there are no errors found in this robot.txt file, which is really good. Good job, Screaming Frog. Next, I'm going to check out Adore Vintage. It has to have the http:// so make sure that you have that in there. So Adore Vintage has a few errors. The site shows them in pink, so you can see which of the errors are in there and kind of check out to see if yours is set up correctly. Adore Vintage obviously used a generator, and they said even in the generator, if you use this as a sample, then you should remove all the comments, and they didn't. So make sure that yours is set up correctly. We're going to go ahead and check out ModCloth now. I'm going to just back it up here. Okay, so ModCloth has a few errors too. They're apparently using the wild character, the star symbol, and they shouldn't be, and they use it several times. So I'd hope that they check it out and correct those errors. Okay, so next, so you can see here that I marked error for ModCloth, error for Adore Vintage, Screaming Frog is good to go. Next, we're going to check the sitemaps. So since we only have a sitemap for ModCloth, what I did is I went to the sitemap for ModCloth by going to the Robot.txt and copying in this sitemap location, and I just did the main one. Okay, so now that I'm in here, I'm just going to right-click and hit Save As, and I'm going to go ahead and save it as an XML document. I usually like to add in the website name, just so that I know. And I'm going to save it as an XML. Then I'm going to go over to Screaming Frog, and I'm going to go up to the mode option. So usually in any other tutorial that I've done, I've just typed in the URL that you want to crawl and done that. But now I'm going to, instead of crawling a live website, I'm going to crawl a list that I have on my computer. So I'm going to go to Mode, List. I'm going to select the file, and I'm going to go ahead and change this to sitemap. And here I have my sitemap. So I can open up the ModCloth sitemap. I can say that it started reading the file, and I just hit OK. So when I looked at their sitemap, I saw that there's a 404 error on this particular part of their sitemap, and that's not so good. You want to make sure that each of your pages that you're linking to in your sitemap, that you're telling Google, hey, I want you to check this out, you want to make sure that the pages are good to go, and then that they're not broken. So that means that they would have a status code of a 200, okay status code, not a 404, not found. Okay, moving on to the next item. Are there any nofollow tags on the page? So this brings up a good point. You can do this with Screaming Frog, and to do this, what you have to do when you crawl your site is, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the spider mode. That's okay. When you crawl your site, you're going to have to set up the configuration just a little bit differently. So under Configuration in Spider, you have to select Follow Internal, nofollow, and External follow. So these are automatically set up, they're not selected. So you want to go ahead and select those before your crawl. Now I already crawled mine for Adore Vintage, and from here you can go over to directives, and you can filter by all your nofollows. So here you can see that Adore Vintage is just saying that they don't want you to follow the additional images pop-ups, which really makes sense. They don't want that kind of duplicate content, which is fine. But yeah, so that's just hopping over to the directives tab after you've selected in the configuration that you want to go ahead and crawl for all the nofollow links to. And then up here, I just went into the search box and typed in nofollow. To get rid of this filter, all you have to do is delete that and then hit enter again, and it'll pull everything back up. So I did the same thing for Screaming Frog. Let me go ahead and open that up again. And when I went into the directives, they didn't have any nofollow links, so I can type it in. When there aren't any on the site, then it'll just show up as blank. Don't get freaked out. That just means that there isn't any to show. So go ahead and delete that. Okay, so the last tip I would say is to go into your Robot.txt or your client's Robot.txt and check for if there are any weird directories going on. And this is specific to you as a company or to you as your own personal website. But let's say that I didn't want the apartment style map in there, or I didn't want tell a friend to be disallowed. I may want to track that. Just make sure that you check your robot.txt file to make sure that everything is set up the way that you want it to be set up. So you may have set this up 2 years ago and things have changed, and there are more things that you want to disallow, or there are more sitemaps that you would like to add in. Just make sure that everything is up to date and that you're set and ready to go. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you guys next time.